Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Wayside Recovery's Maternal Infant Health Series. Today, we will be hearing speaker Calvin Williams, who will share with us today on the topic of fathers are made and not born, understanding men's transition to fatherhood. It is 12:02. We will wait maybe just another minute and we will begin. We are happy to see everyone in the community who are posting their role and where they may be tuning in from. I have placed in the chat the link to the Maternal Health Series, which has the information and the ability for you to scroll through the upcoming events and past events, and also where you can register. The upcoming presentation that will be next will be Doulas Are So Much More, happening on March 3rd, the same hour from 12 to 1 o'clock Central Time. And you can register for that upcoming event. You will receive a survey after this presentation where you can select if you would like to have the CEUs. We need your feedback. It is so valuable. And we also ask that you would recommend any additional speakers. You are the community, you are the village, we are learning together, and we value your feedback. Today's presentation is, I'm tongue-tied, excuse me. We are having this presentation as a result of a SAMHSA SOARS grant in partnership with Minnesota Department of Health, who is our partners for this event. We are grateful for that. And so I see that it is 12:04. I am going to place some additional information in the chat regarding our sponsorship, as well as any upcoming links to events. My name is Nicole Fernandez. I am the project manager for the Maternal and Infant Health Series here at Wayside Recovery Center, where we have served women in recovery and empowerment and changing lives for 60 years. And this Maternal and Infant Health Series is a professional development, educational health series where we are excited to present valuable information to make impact and change to address maternal and infant health disparities. Without further ado, I would like to read the bio by Mr. Calvin Williams, who will be presenting to us today again on Fathers Are Made, Not Born, Understanding Men's Transition to Fatherhood. Mr. Calvin Williams is a fatherhood practitioner for over 20 years. He has developed community-based statewide fatherhood initiatives in Ohio and Oklahoma. He is a certified lactation counselor and has co-authored PrEP's On My Shoulders fatherhood curriculum and a co-investigator on one which is current, fatherhood research projects focused on the mental and physical well-being of fathers. Without further ado, I'm excited to present to you Mr. Calvin Williams. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and hello to everybody. I'm grateful that you attended to hear some of the few things I have to say, and I'm also interested in hearing what you have to say about the information as well. So there will be time for dialogue and discussion. So I'm gonna share my screen and we'll just get to it. Let's see here. Okay. Are we good with the screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So fathers are made, not born. Understanding men's transition to fatherhood. People don't spend a lot of time thinking about, how men move into fatherhood in our society. We tend to, not with any malice or any negativity, we tend to say, hey, you're a father now, you just need to act like it, start functioning and performing like a father. And so we're going to think about that in a different way today. The fact that, look at some of the factors that go into men moving into fatherhood. Okay, and of course, the PowerPoint slide won't move, so we'll start all over. Let's see here. There we go. All right. I guess if I get it on the right, there we go. All right, let's go. So we're going to do a little warm up for our time to about fathers. I always like to kind of help set the mood and bring the spirit of the father into the room. And we're going to do that through a little video where a military father surprises his son. He comes home and surprises his son that he's there. And so I'm giving you an advance warning, it may induce tears. Okay. Whew. All right, so continuing on, now listen to some grown men reflect on their experiences with their fathers.
My father was a child of his generation.
I remember he was around, but very absent.
He was around quite a bit.
He worked really, really hard for everything that he had.
He died when I was 6 months old.
He was one of those dads that didn't express outwardly in words very much.
We never had a close relationship, never did anything together specifically.
He did a lot of things right, but we didn't realize it.
He was always a rock that we could always depend on in our household.
Growing up, I don't know, there was like a void in my life.
We would just throw the football back and forth. He would teach me how to like throw a spiral. It's one of my fondest memories.
He worked almost 80 hours a week for 15 odd years. So I didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with my dad.
I was always craving his approval.
Just he's not the most verbal person, and he's not the most social person, so.
He never said it. Always thinking that, well, because I give you the necessities of life, you should know it by osmosis.
My mother was primarily the one who gave me advice.
And I remember actually one night like watching him hit my mom, and that's the last time that I really remember him being around.
And when I was 12, I found out that I was the product of an affair.
My sense of person and who I was kind of ripped away from me.
I had, I guess, anger issues when I was younger.
I never had a father, so I just kind of had to figure stuff out on my own.
I didn't realize until recently that was all rooted in my father being absent.
So I definitely believe it affected my ability to raise my children in that aspect.
When I had children, I really wanted to be a good dad.
I don't think anybody has the manual on fatherhood or really what to do.
When my son was born, I just felt afraid.
I worked hard at not disappointing them, even though I did.
Luckily, I had a very good example to follow, but so many times we get off track and we don't follow that example.
So I'm actually really excited to have kids so I can fulfill that role.
We have a wonderful family where we're really involved and communicate well with each other.
The strength lies in being transparent.
Be there, be honest, and be the type of person you would want your son to grow up to be.
It's not always being a really great provider, but it's really about spending time.
When you don't feel like doing what they want to do it anyway.
Be creative and give them a challenge.
The biggest thing I take away is being there counts.
Yeah. What does it mean to be a dad? So in the first video, we looked at the power in a father-child relationship. And then in the second video, you look through the words and the lives of these grown men, how diverse fathers' impacts can be and how they last for a really long time. So mothering, we tend to think that mothering is instinctive while fathers must learn to parent, right? Now, let's just take a look at that, right? Here's Dr. Kyle Pruitt, who's one of the early fatherhood researchers. When the field was just taking shape, the fatherhood field was just taking shape, and some of his thoughts really set the pace, right? Set the foundation for the fatherhood field, because he recognized through his research that children are born with a drive to find and connect to their fathers. Also observed that fathers have the internal capacity, the instinct to respond to children, and that children and fathers hunger for each other early, often, and for a very long time. Now, the title of this presentation is Fathers Are Made, Not Born. So you might feel like we're entering into territory where they're born with these drives and these instincts. And I'm going to prove you right, but we're going to see how external environments, communities, families, how things need to come into play to shape a man as a father. So one of my favorite fatherhood researchers is Dr. Anna Menken out of the United Kingdom. She's an anthropologist with a focus on fathers and fatherhood. And she observed through an anthropological lens that evolution does not leave things to chance, right? So evolution is really, really precise and intentional in terms of how it moves things along and how things evolve. So nothing is to chance. And we bring that point up, bring up this point, that evolution saw fit to produce the very rare phenomenon of the investing father. And Dr. Manchin talks about the rarity in the animal kingdom where a father is investing in their children, right? And so according to Dr. Manchin, about 500,000 years ago, evolution saw fit to develop this investing father in human beings, right? And so why would evolution do that if, mom is there, say we're in prehistoric times and mom is there taking care of the baby, all right? Why does the father need to be investing? One of the things about evolution is it hates redundancy. And so what Dr. Manchin points to is that the investing father is different from the investing mother. Both of them bring different things to the survival of the species, right? Because evolution is not going to create two things to do the same thing, right? So evolution brought about this thing of where fathers are investing in their children, which is very rare in the animal kingdom. Okay, so we're going to look at dimensions of fathers, three things that make paternal involvement so dynamic, diverse, and unique. So we're used to seeing, thinking, and talking about fathers in one dimension, or sometimes no dimensions. I experienced that today. I was in a meeting and I was responding through my fatherhood lens to things that were being said. And at the end of the meeting, one person told me, said, you know what? I had never thought about fathers as related to this work that we're doing with families, right? So we're used to seeing fathers in one dimension or no dimensions, right? So we're going to introduce you another way to think about dads, okay? So the first dimension is the father as a human being, as a person. The second dimension is his conception or ideas about the role. And his third dimension is his parenting, the actual behaviors. And so it begs the question, is a father at his best when all three of these dimensions are combined? Is it necessary for all three to be in alignment for a father to be effective at raising his children? What comes before what, right? I mean, how do we, this slide gives you an idea around different conversations you can have about fathers, right? Because you break fathers apart and you end up with these three different dimensions that are very critical. And we're gonna look at each of them in detail. So first we'll look at the father as a human, as a person, the first dimension. So when a child is born, you can see all of the factors that can decide how healthy that child is going to develop. What are their opportunities for early learning and success? And so a child is born into a culture. There's adverse childhood experiences. Now we know that zip codes can determine your length of life or other aspects of your well-being. The environment the child is born into. Was there early brain development work done? Was there trauma? What did the family of origin look like? Were fathers and fatherhood strong in that family of origin? And also resources. Were there enough resources for the child to grow up in a healthy way? Then you go down and look at the child as a little boy, and you start thinking about things like social emotional skills. What support system does he have for this period of his transition from infant into man? What type of hurts are present in that early boyhood stage? Is there nurturance involved? What type of nurturance? So all these factors we have to think about as we look at men traveling down a path to becoming fathers. And so when you look at the young man as an adolescent or as a young man, you start thinking about role identity. How did he come across and understand his role? Socialization, how was he socialized to think about relationships, parenting? Was he socialized toward those things at all, right? What about resilience? Was that ever developed in him? And then you start moving towards the man and you see things come into play like values, worldview, psychosocial development, continuing development of the man, wounds carried potentially from boyhood or childhood, goals that he has for himself as a person and as a father. Is there intergenerational transfer of wounds and pain that are afflicting this now man? What about the belief system? What are the strengths that he's bringing as a man, and what are the strengths he's bringing into his role as a father? And so you look at all of these elements as the micro level of fatherhood development, because and we'll talk about this in a minute, but research doesn't tie all this together nicely, right? There's not a lot of solid research on fatherhood development, but we're learning, we're getting there, because we're understanding that the things that happen to the babies, the things that happens to the little boy, the things that happen to the adolescent, or things that don't happen or don't go well, or that go well, all feed into not only the type of man that he will become, but the type of father that he is likely to become as well. So consider these just a micro level of all the factors that go into this father's development. We look at the macro level, and fathers are in this kind of milieu of policies and laws and regulations and legislation that they have no control over, but that have a direct impact on their ability to be a father, their ability to be the type of father they want to be. And so you look at these things such as education, criminal justice, the advance of technology, trade policies, human services, care and policies, healthcare, globalization. Men have no say-so in how these things go, or little say-so in how these things go, but they have a huge impact on his ability to be a father, and again, to be the type of father he wants to be. and you see the little cloud up there that says this will be rough, but I'm a dad now. That represents the attitude of the thousands and thousands and thousands of fathers I've worked with over the years, facing really, really difficult odds. A lot of those odds based on policies in some of these areas that have traversed over the decades. But to a man, they're for it. They're down for it. They're ready for the challenge, because that their desire to be a father and to be a good father, whatever that means to them, is so strong, right? So you have a micro level of factors, and you have a macro level of factors that have an impact on the type of fathers that men will become. Okay. And it's useful to think about this in this way, because it kind of opens up our eyes to when you see a father, and we may be serving that father. The father may just be a partner of somebody else we're serving. The father may not be the direct recipient of our care. But think about all of these things that go into that person, that man sitting right there in front of you, right? So you look at the three dimensions, you look at the micro factors, you look at the macro factors, and then you start having a more nuanced, fuller view of the man as a father. And you can kind of assert or hang on the father you're in front of, that he's come through a lot of this, and he's here and he has value, and we need to respect that value. So fatherhood is both universal and cultural, and it's really important. The influence of culture on fathers has evolved over time, right? Over generations, centuries, and millennia. So culture has an impact on fathers. We looked at all those factors previously. Well, culture has a huge impact on how fathers have evolved, how fathers see themselves, how they see their fathering role. Cultural beliefs affect fathering styles implicitly, but current social forces affect paternal behavior more directly, right? So culture has its limits. In the previous two slides, particularly the macro elements of father's development, those social forces have an outsized impact on the father's behavior, the father's goals, the type of father he's going to be. So this is a really important point. So you can't take a community that is devoid of resources, right? Neglected over decades, poor policies around health and education. You can't take a community that is missing so much and expect a father to just lean into the cultural belief and be this great father, right? Social forces matter on paternal behavior. So now we're looking at fatherhood, the conception or ideas a man could hold about the role. There's two perspectives or lenses to which we can look at this transition of men into fathers. One is the self-image transformation. How does he see himself during pregnancy, at labor and delivery, right? Because that transformation is taking place, and it's important for us to know that. The other is the triadic relationship development. Moving from the dyad to the triad is really significant for men as they move into fatherhood. And again, the social environment has an influence. So the family, the neighborhood, the city, the community has an influence. Another way of looking at it is through the men's personal, right? So the personal development and transition of a man into a father, the societal part of that, the part that society plays in that, and then family related, right? So is he looking into his family and seeing the models that he wants to see for himself, or is he looking into his family and seeing what he doesn't want to be as a father? Is he looking at society and getting cues from society about what fathers and fatherhood is about? right? And how does all this matter to him as an individual person? Because men receive men who are engaging in family or fatherhood services receive a lot of information about fathers and fatherhood that's really broad, but they're calculating it down to their personal level. Like, how does this affect me? What does this mean to me? What can this do for me to become the type of father that I want to be? So it's just a couple ways to look at the transition of men into fathers. So paternal identity has a positive correlation between increased emphasis on paternal identity and paternal fetal bonding, right? So a man's identity as a father, however that's set, some research has correlated that with paternal fetal bonding, right? So how that father is going to likely to bond with that infant early in life. And again, but despite huge societal shifts, primarily women in the workforce, men still value and idealize being the provider and breadwinner, which is not a bad thing. We know that there's a decided shift. There's different arguments about how much it is, but there's been a shift over the past couple decades of men seeing themselves as more than a provider or a breadwinner. And that's good in the main. But the challenge is to see themselves as more than a provider and a breadwinner. They need to see that in the culture, in society as well, right? So that it's reinforced that, yes, you are more than these two things. And most men function outside of being a provider and a breadwinner very well, but they still focus intently on those two aspects of being a man and a father. So now we'll look at fathering in terms of the parenting and the behaviors. So fatherhood involves neurobiological, neurochemical, and hormonal factors that are evolutionary in nature, right? So they get many of the same rushes that mothers do from parenthood, but the payoff for fathers depends on proximity and interaction. So when we talk about fathering behaviors, it is natural for the father, it is natural for the infant to want to be close, to connect, to be with each other. And so, and I know Dr. Manchin talks about this as that proximity and interaction is what triggers the things that are innate about men in terms of becoming a father. And so you might read into this that if there are barriers, if there are issues, or if there's a lack of proximity and interaction, both father and child are losing, right? So the father doesn't get to exhibit his behaviors toward the child doesn't get to satiate that hunger for that father figure that he knows is there. I know Dr. Pruitt in his book, Father Need, talks about infants in utero and in the very early days of life know to seek that other force, that other voice, that other energy. So if that's not happening, fathers and babies are losing, right? And we're going to look at some of the ways that fathers and babies get disconnected in a minute. But I think it's a really important point. So when you see fathers who have infants, I do a lot of co-parenting work, co-parenting coaching, that is, for a fatherhood program here in Cincinnati. And I've been doing it for 7 years. And so I hear thousands, countless stories of fathers who have infants who they've not seen in the first 6, 7, 8 months of life for various reasons that we'll look at in a second. So we got to know that if we want that father baby magic to happen, we have to keep fathers and babies close to each other and interacting with each other. So now we talk about play. This is not discussed a lot in fatherhood classes, courses, and service, but fathers' active play and physical exercise with their children has been linked to higher levels of father involvement and better child health. Play with the child, really, really critically important. So fathers and children have a functional element correlated with several positive child outcomes. So when fathers are playing with their children, these are the positive outcomes that may occur. Children may learn competitiveness without aggression. They may learn that cooperation to buffer anxiety, healthy experimentation, social competence, peer acceptance, popularity, and a sense of autonomy. Look at that list. What's likely to come out of fathers playing with their children. Yet, I don't see a lot of family serving organizations, including fatherhood programs, that really put a focus on play. Now, to be fair, that's in part because fathers who are accessing those programs typically have some really intense issues around housing, employment, family law related matters, being able to see their children, those type of things. But we really need to ramp up the encouragement to fathers, the information, informing them in culturally sensitive ways that you really want to play with your children a lot, because a lot goes on when a father's playing with his child. And the research is clear that the things that come out of a father playing with his children are different than what may come out when a mother is interacting with or playing with the children, because they're going to do it two different ways, right? Neither one's better than the other. They're different, but they need to be complementary of each other. And so really important point in fathering behavior, that play receives the right focus. So we can't make a list of fathering behaviors to encompass all the aspects of fathering, but we can look at a few. Right? So feeling, behaving responsibly to your child is a behavior that fathers take on. Being emotionally engaged with your child, being physically accessible, which again, we're going to look at in a minute. When that gets interrupted, a whole lot of things can go wrong for baby and dad. They're both missing out incredibly. Providing material support to sustain the child's needs, and exerting influence in child rearing decisions. So if you look at the list, it goes back to, I have to have proximity, I have to have engagement and interaction with my child, right? To be able to, live out at least these few aspects of fathering, right? Even though that list would be really hard to complete, but here are some of the main things that fathers really value in their behaviors towards their children. So fathers maintaining or losing connection with their children. This is a very serious issue that I don't think a lot of people understand in terms of, because I remember one time I was talking to a veteran family service worker in a community, and she was standing up for fathers, but at the same time talked about how some of these fathers just walk away. And I, as a veteran father practitioner, I couldn't let that slide. So I was like, well, there are reasons that fathers maintain connection or lose connection with their children. And she didn't say this in a mean or nasty way. She just asked me, like what? So it was more funny than me, because she was like, no, please educate me on these so-called ways that fathers can lose or maintain connection, right? Because in the broader community's mind, sometimes it's like, you should just be doing what you're supposed to do, no matter what. And we just talked about, societal forces have a explicit impact on fathering behavior. So let's look at some of the ways that fathers maintain or lose connection with their children. Okay, so these are some of the ways that fathers stay connected. And I want you to hold this in mind, because I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts about these factors that keep fathers connected to their children, or what's not on the list, or what may need to be removed from the list. I'm very interested in your feedback on that. So now let's take a look at some of the ways fathers lose connection with their children. Yeah. And again, I'm just as interested in your responses and reactions to this list as well. But so now we have, some objective facts that help us understand how fathers stay connected or lose connection. So we can move away from the "he just walked away" or the sperm donor and those other pejorative terms that are I'm glad, kind of being moved to the side over the past 20 years since the fatherhood movement has been taking place. But now we know, right? So we don't have to, kind of use emotion to talk about this subject, man. There are concrete things that fathers need to stay connected, and there are concrete things that can get in the way and sever that connection to their children. And some of them, if not a lot of them, out of the father's own control. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. In my mind, I kind of think that the things that we just talked about relate to maternal and child health. I'm curious to hear from you about how what we've talked about up to this point relates to maternal and child health. The floor, the mic, the door is open.
You can please place your questions in the chat, and then I'm going to see if I can unmute. I'm new to this, so I'm going to try to do that. But in the meantime, please place your questions in the chat while I try to figure that out. Any questions?
Comments?
I see Stephanie says, what started the fatherhood movement?
Wow. So that was started during the first Bush administration. And I'm just using that as a reference for time. Yeah, there became an interest in fathers, and it's not sad to say, it's true. The initial interest was in how can we get fathers to pay child support, right? And that's when the deadbeat, dead broke narrative was dominant, right? And so that narrative influenced policy and legislation. So when the fatherhood movement began, that was the focus. Those early demonstration projects in the early 90s and late 90s, Parents Fair Share project, some of you may heard of that, and the other, kind of multi-site demonstrations, they were focused on how can we get these low-income Black and brown men to pay child support, and that's just the truth. And you track that research, that literature along the path, and you'll see a point when practitioners, researchers, government funders, university funders went, oh, wait a minute, they care about their kids. Right? And so then the field started shifting, still had that heavy focus on child support, right? But it started shifting to more of the behavioral aspects, the emotional and psycho-emotional aspects of being a father and shoring up men, or the way I used to look at it back then was tapping into them to what they already wanted for their kids. So the field started back then. It was heavily funded by universities and funders like Robert Wood Johnson, Annie E. Casey. They were big, and they were spending tens of millions of dollars researching and setting up the fatherhood field. Then, under the second Bush administration, funding was set aside from the federal government for fatherhood. And that's when we had there was a fatherhood cabinet or commission in the administration at that time. And so $50 million was being let out every 2 or 3 years to fund fatherhood programs. And then, of course, under the Obama administration, that figure went up to 75 million, right? So that's a quick down and dirty on how the field started. And a lot of it, had to do with at the time, the Christian right movement, right? So that was a family first movement. And so at that time, that movement included fathers. And so that movement had heavy sway over politics at that time. And so fatherhood work or the field began out of those as well.
Awesome. So we have figured out how you can unmic. So some people have placed questions in the chat. If you would like to say them audibly, please just raise your hand, and my co-host, Ms. Joy, will also unmute you so that you can ask your question audibly. We do have a lot of questions, which is awesome. So just raise your hand, and then we'll be able to see that and unmute you. Okay, I'm going to go to Brittany's question, which I believe is next. How much time of this is Chris's question. How much time of active play should be promoted to reap the benefits you outline?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of data on number of hours and that type of thing. So just from my experience, though, I think, fathers need to set aside some time each day, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, whatever, to play with their children. I followed that advice as raising my son. I mean, I was constantly on the lookout for opportunities to engage him in something playful or silly. And I'll give you an example. We would be riding down the street in Cincinnati, and Cincinnati State University sits atop a huge hill, very grassy hill. And we're just on regular errands on a Saturday morning. And because I'm in tune to this play thing with my son, I see the hill and I see an opportunity immediately. I whip a U-turn, park that car illegally, and then we trudge up the hill to the very top just so we can roll down. We rolled down together, got back in the car and left. So that's what I would like to see programs that are serving families and programs that are serving fathers do. Emphasize play. And really, it's almost like breast milk, right? We're fond of saying in the breastfeeding work, any breast milk is better than no breast milk at all, right? And so that's what I want to say about play. Any play is better than no play at all. And last thing I want to say is we did a small research study here in Cincinnati. It was about 41 fathers involved. And one part of the survey, we asked them to rank their choices for these various aspects of fathering. And so providing and protecting, as we talked about before, came out at the top for a lot of men's first and second choices. You know what was the fifth and sixth choice for a whole lot of those men? Play, creativity, and play. So we have to help men understand what they have to offer their children through play. Man, that intellectual development, that emotional regulation, oh my goodness. So yeah, so a long answer, but I would say some play every day is better than no play anyway, if I may rhyme.
Awesome. Megan made a comment. She said it relates because having a healthy partner for mom is stabilizing and supporting.
Mm-hmm. In terms of how it relates to maternal child health. Yep.
Yes. And then, okay, I see Chris trying to help me out there, but that didn't work for me, Chris. For some reason, my functionality is not allowing me to promote you guys to that. We had the active play. So here's Brittany's question. She said, please repeat the biggest barriers that fathers experience. Also share what supports the state could provide to support fathers.
Yeah, well, the biggest barriers are going to be around housing, employment. And again, we have to make the distinction, right? We're talking about the fathers that I'm serving, low income, middle income fathers. So the biggest issues would be housing, employment, and access to their children. Yep, that's hands down what comes off the top of my mind for that. Right. What was the second part of the question?
And then Brittany's her comment relating to that is that she works with women during pregnancy. I think it is very important to try to engage the fathers during pregnancy. I also think that this can be a challenge when so much of the focus is on the mother, especially in healthcare setting. Any ideas for engagement in the setting of prenatal appointments?
Absolutely. Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center asked me to talk to one of their research groups that were doing action research, right? Well child visits with moms from the community surrounding the hospital. And they asked me to talk to them about fatherhood engagement. And what I told them was, you look at the space that your families enter into. Does it look like or say anything about fatherhood? Fathers and fatherhood? What's on the wall? What's on the tables? The colors, etc. The other thing I talked about was when you're talking, like say it's a well child visit situation, and you're talking or prenatal appointment, when you're talking to mom and dad, if they're both sitting there, look at and talk to dad, right? Ask dad important questions, tell dad important things, right? I had a father, and I'm editing this video, but a father who had him and the mom weren't married. Right, the mom was pregnant, and they ended up dealing with 3 different hospitals for various reasons. It's a long story, but he said the first 2 hospitals were awful. They treated him like he just didn't exist or didn't even need to be there, right? And he talked about how it made him feel. He also talked about how that made the mother of his child feel, the pregnant mom felt. She started not telling him about appointments because she didn't want him to experience that. So, whew, that one got me though. So really, what does the space look like when you're talking to the parents? Are you talking to dad? Can you call home and ask for dad? Can you send a letter home for dad with information for the family? Those type of things. And when dad is sitting there, potentially head down, trying to look like he's not really interested in listening, he's listening and he cares. So just set your mind there and go ahead and treat him accordingly as somebody who's intently interested in what's going on here, instead of somebody who just gave her a ride to the appointment.
Yes, no, that's really valuable. One thing, just personally, I valued when I was having my children that the doctor asked permission to even examine me when my husband was in the room. And I thought that was really powerful. He was like, now we're, he was explaining things, but he addressed my husband because he was present and asked permission. And so I never really thought about that as engaging and connecting. And that's a prime example of really honoring that he was in that space. May I examine your wife, etc. Engaged him in what this visit was about. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Adrienne says, well, I believe all of the information is insightful and wonderful that children get the opportunity to interact with their children while teaching so many unknowingly things, bonding, competitiveness, and mostly love, knowing that dad is there builds long-term efficacy. And then Maria says, county and federal programs have excluded fathers for community and families. A form of genocide has removed fathers from families, creating a huge imbalance within communities.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon, and it's something that it's not getting enough attention. I have another research project. It's been in IRB for, I don't know, 8 months now, but the research project, the hypothesis is there a connection between fathers' mental health and well-being and their access to and parenting time with their children? So we are looking for any type of link to see if it exists between those two things and their mental well-being, right? Because anecdotally, through service activity, we see fathers really, really hurting around that, but there's no data, right? And so we're coming off a depression study that Brittany Pope of Ohio Guidestone is the principal investigator on. So she's helping me with this other study, and because she's working on the depression study, that kind of colored my thinking about this one and saying, I wonder what mental health aspects are connected to the fact that too many low-income fathers get booted out of their kids' lives. So I think I answered the question. I might have went too far afield.
Thank you. So Megan says, I've seen fathers being praised for doing things moms are expected to do regarding childcare. It's not expected that dads will be full partners or involved with the family. It sets low expectations for dad and demoralizes moms.
Ooh, wow. Yeah.
Another question, this is from Brittany. What government supports would you like to see created or maintained for fathers? Government supports.
Right. So two things, and one, the other one probably falls under the first, but the first thing I think about is guaranteed basic income. There are enough pilots and research around that. The state of California just launched a guaranteed basic income program. City of Stockton, California had a UBI demonstration project. It's been done in Alaska on, I forget the particular tribe up there that had a casino in their community, and they decided from casino profits, let's just give each family $400 a month and see what happens, right? And in all of those places, including some places overseas, the outcomes show it's outstanding results, right? Particularly around parenting, right? The participants and the researchers concluded that the participants felt better and indeed behaved better as parents because this extra $400 or $500 a month with no strings attached was coming into the household, right? So there's that. The other thing I think about is child support. In Ohio, we did a pretty good job of reforming or updating, I should say, the child support policies and practice. It took about 10 years to do this. The Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families, which I'm on the board of, we worked all that time to influence legislators and policymakers, and we got it done. So the big things there that came out of that was child care costs now are capped, right? Mom can't go, or the custodial parent, which is usually mom, can't go and get $1,000 a week daycare arrangement and say, hey, where's your part, right? So they put a cap on that. They put a self-sufficiency reserve policy in place so that the child support can't be set at a point where the father can't even take care of himself, right? So, and it was others in there, but it was really, really progressive for Ohio. It was really progressive, and I'm proud of the work we did, but there's more work to do around that. I'm not a child support expert, so I may be speaking out of school, but I think about child support payments like I think about universal basic income. There should be a universal basic child support allotment, right? So, and then you can tie the father into that non-monetarily, right? Then we can seek other outputs from him, behaviors from him, right? Maybe he's incentivized. So those are the type of things I think about.
I like your line of thinking. There's many creative ways to support low income and even middle income, because if they're single dads, right, and they're low income and not even at middle income, they need supports too. And I'm happy to say in Minneapolis, moving from Massachusetts, this is the most I have ever seen of single dads taking care of children here and seeing a lot of different supports. And so I'm really happy about that. But here's the $1 million question, and this will be the last question before we close. And this is from Ms. Joy. What can we do? What do you think about engaging more fathers, or how we engage more fathers will actually address the maternal and infant health outcomes and disparities for BIPOC individuals?
Yeah. So for me, fathers, again, educated, equipped, and empowered right? So they're educated about the process and issues that come along with pregnancy. They're educated about prenatal care, labor and delivery, post-delivery. They're educated about the homecoming, to the point where they can add their own input, and really, most importantly, they can look out for mom, right? Because we know that BIPOC women are dealing with a host of biases and challenges in the healthcare system, right? Including one of those being that when women of color are seen in prenatal care spaces by themselves, there's an assumption that there is no man involved, right? So men can, I mean, and that's what I do in my fathers and breastfeeding work. I'm educating fathers to be partners in the breastfeeding experience. And most importantly, not just talking about the benefits of breastfeeding, but I'm educating them on common challenges and what the response is to those challenges. So now you have an educated man in the house when breastfeeding challenges occur. Can he fix the challenge? Probably not, but he's knowledgeable and he knows the language. He can talk to mom, he can encourage her, he can follow up because he knows what's supposed to be happening for the various challenges. So dads in prenatal care spaces make moms better, right? They make moms better because if dad is wide-eyed and empowered and educated, he's leaning into that experience, and that bodes well for mom and baby.
Wonderful. And I know, Mr. Williams, there's an inquiry about you sharing your contact information. I don't know if you are willing to put that in the chat for folks to see. And any final closing remarks? We're at 12:59. I'll yield to you and then I'll close.
Let me get my info in here real quick.
Okay. Again, comments saying great webinar. You know, what a great session. Thank you. From Elizabeth and Adrienne, Chris, saying thank you.
Thank you to everyone. I really appreciate that feedback. I mean, this, as you can tell, this is a passion area, and I had the same passion from 20 years ago when I started. Here's what I want. I want to see more women speaking up for fathers and fatherhood in general. And I'm going to tell you the corollary for me. What I'm telling men in the community is, I want you supporting breastfeeding at home, but I want you out in the community being vocal about supporting breastfeeding, right? And it's the same thing for women. Nothing is more powerful than a woman standing up for fathers and fatherhood. And I know it because Ohio Commission on Fatherhood, we have an amazing woman who's been leading that commission for the last 5 or 6 years. And so I know what that looks like. I know what it sounds like, and I know the impact of women standing up for fathers. So use your voice and stand up for fathers and fatherhood.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was good.
This is awesome. And there were also comments about this is not talked about enough, and that this information is so valuable. It is very appreciated. And so I just want to thank you again for your time. Please always let Wayside know how we can support you and partner in sharing information on any of the research projects you're working on. Definitely, I think this audience wants to know and stay abreast. But again, thank you everyone for attending. We just look forward to for you coming back maybe March 3rd for doulas are so much more. You can find that information on the landing page from Maternal Health at Wayside Recovery Center. Thank you everyone for attending. We will send out a survey. That information is very valuable, not only to us, but to Mr. Williams. And if you're interested in CEUs, please complete that survey and you will get your certificate within a few days. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. Take care.